Welcome to Pardon the Intermission, a podcast that takes a look at movies, TV, and all things entertainment from the past, the present, and the future. Remember to subscribe and like the podcast and give a review. This helps out the podcast and is greatly appreciated. Now on to the show.
Yes, hey everyone, welcome to Pardon the Intermission. I'm Eric.
And I'm Jason.
And if we do sound a little different, I am in studio. Jason is still remote for the second show.
Yes, I am from
yes.
the comfort and sometimes climate-controlled confines of my kitchen table. Yes, I'm here at home.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the kitchen table. What are you eating over there? You got anything good?
Not really. I just finished Taco Bell.
Oh, okay. Uh-oh.
Yeah.
You know what they say about Taco Bell?
Yeah, I've heard the rumors. I may need to have a rectal exam after dinner.
Oh, yeah, it's good going in and hurts coming
bad
out.
coming out.
Yeah. Sorry for that. Sorry for that image, folks. Hey, you can check out our social media. We are on Twix at PTI_podcast.
And, of course, we haven't left Facebook, folks. We are still there at Pardon the Intermission.
And we also do a little bit of Rumble and a little bit of YouTube, putting up some movie reviews, some trailer reactions, some fun stuff over there. Check that out if you get a chance. And that is, just look up Pardon the Intermission, and it should pop up. Hey, we wanted to talk about, there was an interesting documentary, Jason. What did we both get to watch?
Yeah, so we both had a chance to watch a documentary called Brats. It airs on Hulu right now. And for those of you who don't know what Brats is about, this is a documentary about the famed group of then young actors known as the Brat Pack. Some of these actors include Andrew McCarthy, Rob Lowe, Emilio Estevez, Ali Sheedy.
I think those were the... what was the other one? I'm sorry?
Molly Ringwald.
Yeah, you know, it's funny. I think now who actually was in the Brat Pack? It was those first four you mentioned, right?
Yes. So
Andrew McCarthy, Emilio Estevez, Ali Sheedy. Was Molly Ringwald in it, or was she more of adjacent Brat Pack?
She was considered in the Brat Pack.
Okay.
As was Rob Lowe.
And then what was the other one too? I can't think of the guy's name from the Breakfast Club.
You're thinking of Anthony Michael Hall.
No, Anthony Michael Hall. He wasn't necessarily in the Brat Pack though, was he?
Well, even though he wasn't officially in the Brat Pack, he was in a couple of the Brat Pack movies like Weird Science and The Breakfast Club.
The Breakfast Club for sure, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then who was the other? Oh my gosh, who's the other actor that played in The Breakfast Club that we didn't mention yet?
You're thinking of Judd Nelson.
Judd Nelson.
Yes. So yes, this documentary is about that group of actors and how they rose to stardom by appearing in some of those movies that John Hughes so eloquently and wonderfully created, like Weird Science, The Breakfast Club, St. Elmo's Fire, and Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles. And the documentary, Eric, specifically focused, it was directed by Andrew McCarthy, who was a member of the Brat Pack. Mm-hmm. And it specifically focuses on the social stigma that's centered around that group of young actors. And what happened was, and I did not know this, Eric, this was educational for me because when these movies came out and when these actors rose to stardom, I was still a kid. I was born in 1975. And even though I was alive when the Brat Pack films came out, I had never seen them in theaters. I didn't see them until I was in high school in the 90s. Yes, I dated myself, folks. So I did not know that the Brat Pack was actually a term that was coined by a writer by the name of David Blum, who wrote the article entitled The Brat Pack that appeared in New York Magazine.
Yeah.
Well, apparently what happened was that article triggered so many social stigmas and so many social stereotypes amongst that group of young actors because the article painted them out to be a bunch of materialistic, self-entitled young kids who were riding the coattails of either famous family members, i.e. Emilio Estevez, or like basically they felt like they were being judged for their looks and who they were, not for their talent.
Yeah, like they were being out and they were out. I think, too, what happened is that a lot of it was during the time of these movies, you know, they all kind of became friends, so they would be seen out in public together and they'd be out kind of partying, having fun like you do when you're young and you know, and hey, you're living that lifestyle. And so, you know, this guy, like you're saying, David Blum, or wrote the article, and
David Blatt. Yeah.
And so they kind of became this entitled group of, or what we thought, from this article, or what we would have thought, right? This entitled group of young kids, young actors, that are out there just having their best life. Did you mention Demi Moore? She was in that too, right?
I did not, but she was. You're right.
Demi Moore, and then you had Rob Lowe.
Yep.
He was also in that. But yeah, I'm sorry, go ahead. So so they were kind of these entitled group of kids that, we would see in all the, at that, back in those days, they just had magazines, or you would say clips from, an entertainment show on TV, but that's about all you would get, especially the magazines were the big thing, but.
Yeah. And so McCarthy, because that article had dredged up so many negative connotations and negative feelings among those actors, that they not only resented the article and what it did to their careers, but they ended up resenting, in some part, each other. And so McCarthy got a group of them together to talk about their experiences being labeled as the Brat Pack. He talked to Emilio Estevez, who appeared in the documentary. He spoke with Ali Sheedy. He spoke with Rob Lowe as well. He did not have. He also spoke with Demi Moore. He did not have. Let's see. Anthony Michael Hall wasn't in it. He also spoke to some other people like Malcolm Gladwell, best-selling author and motivational speaker. He also spoke with. Let's see.
Leah Thompson.
Leah Thompson,
which I think she was. They call her Brat Pack adjacent. In other words, she was not necessarily in the direct group. Same with John Cryer. He spoke with John Cryer.
That's right. Spoke with John Cryer, who was in Pretty in Pink.
And then Timothy Hutton, which I know in the show they kind of called Timothy Hutton's a little bit older, but I think because he started so young that it seemed like he kind of kicked off that era of movies. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was really captivated by this, because I had no idea that these actors had harbored so many of these strong feelings, not only towards their moniker, but towards each other. And so McCarthy, again, had a chance to talk to all these people and just basically let them air out all the dirty laundry. And the one interview I really liked the most in the film, Eric, was when he was speaking with Emilio Estevez, because, Emilio Estevez was very upfront about how he felt about it. And I think in some ways he took the Brat Pack title more personal, because, again, he's the son of Martin Sheen, and he's the brother of Charlie Sheen, a well-known Hollywood family. And so Emilio made it sound like, and he felt like, okay, no one took me seriously because they all thought I was riding the coattails of my dad and my brother, which he didn't. And he said, I remember him specifically telling Andrew McCarthy, this in some point affected me getting cast in movies like Young Guns, getting cast in other productions, because he wanted to be cast based on his talents and what he could do, not what an article said he could not do. And so I had no idea that these actors and these people involved with the Brat Pack had harbored all of these feelings. And I just found it to be very emotional, very introspective, and very reflective as well. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I thought it was very interesting. I mean, as far as watching, in the beginning of watching the show, I could tell, of course, like I said, Andrew McCarthy was really he spearheaded the thing. I mean, he was obviously the main force in that. He was the through force. He was the one that went and talked to all these people. But you can tell he was the one that his career, and I think his career got probably hit the most by this. And I think a little bit of the reason too, which I think he brings out, is that because I think he let that was the type of person he was. He let that affect him the most. Yeah. And I think this whole thing is about really to me the movie Brats is really about him kind of reliving it and coming to terms with what happened. And you could kind of see, he's talking to all these actors and actresses about it, but you can kind of see that it's him it's almost like a therapy session for him. And he's kind of going through, and you can kind of see it's kind of like, it's almost like he comes to terms with this fact that it affected me. I shouldn't have let it affect me. I kind of screwed up by letting it affect me, but we're moving on now, but we at the same time also accepting the fact of their place in movie history. There was one thing that came out of this. It's so the funniest part though to me was when he was talking to the author, because that was the big thing. He wanted to confront this author who had written this piece. David Blum, the one David Blum you pointed out earlier, and he was sitting there, and so they have the whole discussion, and he's trying to get him. Well, don't you think though it was kind of your fault? Remember, he kept telling him that. Yep. He's like, you're the one that brought it up. You're the one that coined it. Didn't you kind of do it out of? Basically, he was like, wasn't it kind of mean? He was basically getting to the point. Wasn't it kind of mean to call us that? Wasn't it kind of mean to do that?
Yep.
And the guy would not admit to it. And then it's funny, he's walking out and they're shaking hands and okay, thank you, this and that. And he turns around and he goes, but still, don't you think it was kind of mean? I was like,
right.
I was like laughing. I was like, he's not letting it go. Right. I thought it was great, man, just holding that guy. Because, here's the thing. And even to us, I mean, we're just, small potatoes, compared to a lot of these guys. But, all these people, especially now with social media, we all have these shows and we all have opinions. But yet, we have to think, how does it affect those people? Exactly. And when it's one thing to say, I didn't read the article, so I can't speak to it. But all I can say is that the show made it sound like, the documentary made it sound like, though, that the article itself didn't necessarily say, hey, these guys are doing great work. It was basically like, hey, these guys are entitled and they're brats, right?
Right. Yeah,
so
exactly.
I need to go back and read the article to get full clarification for myself. But anyway, the point being, though, is that, that's the thing, is that it's one thing when you comment on people's work, but then when you're trying to attack, when this was kind of, I think for this guy, and they even pointed it out when McCarthy was talking to this guy directly, is that, listen, I mean, do you think you were kind of trying to, further your career? And he even mentioned that, listen, you guys were popular, I'm a writer, and sure, this guy was trying to get himself basically noticed, and that was a way to do it, right, is to kind of call these guys out. So... Yeah. So anyway, I it kind of just goes to show, it wasn't just about what the article wasn't just about their work, but it was kind of an attack on them. And then, like you say, it was amazing how it kind of like you could see all the different perspectives of people. Yeah. And we don't think about that. These people are actually people. They have lives. Yeah. And, at the time, especially, you have to understand back in the 80s, these guys were held on a pedestal. We don't have the social media where we get to see maybe we get to see, I complain about it all the time, where we see too much of their lives now and they're too vocal. I don't want to know your politics. I don't want to know this. I don't want to know that. But now we see them more as people. Back then they were really, icons. They were very iconic. And so when somebody would write a story about this, the kind of weight that would carry, not only for the public, the people that are watching these actors, but the actors themselves. And so you could see, like you say, you could see how it really affected, especially Emilio. He's like, man, I don't even want to talk about it. He said the only reason he did is because he goes, you called me, which was cool, which I thought was cool. When he's asking, because Andrew's like, well, why did you do it then if you don't want to talk about it? He goes, because you called me, because you asked, basically.
Exactly.
So, I thought it was kind of cool for them to get that out there because, we would see these guys in magazines and, like I said, on entertainment shows and just, how glamorous their lives are. But, you got to think about McCarthy. I mean, this guy had an alcohol problem and he admitted to it for years. And so it could have been, I don't know why, but, it could have been partly because of this whole weight of carrying this, Brat Pack moniker and what it did to his career. I don't know, but you could see him wrestling with that. You could see him coming to terms with that. I thought myself too, the same thing. It was very well done, especially for anybody who has grown up in that era of entertainment and those movies. I mean, for people who are younger listening to the show, if you get a chance to watch those movies, and especially John Hughes, you keep hearing the name John Hughes, and he did a lot of those movies, the coming of age movies. I'll let you go here in a second, Jason. One more thing I want to say is that, they brought a great point in this documentary.
Yeah.
And I can't remember who said it, and I think it was Rob Lowe. And Rob Lowe, man, that guy's so great because he seems so grounded. You know what I mean? He's kind of like, doesn't he? He's like the guy. He's so pretty, you want to hate him, right? Because the guy's so good looking.
Yeah, right.
But he also seems so grounded. And and he was talking about it, and he goes, at that time, I think it was Rob Lowe, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong, but anyway, he was saying basically that you have to understand that was a time when back then people that were going to the movies were like adults. But when they started making these type of movies, these coming of age movies, all of a sudden the younger generation started going to movies. And it's true, that was the time when we had malls and we had, all these movie theaters, and you would go, didn't have streaming. You didn't have even VHS tape. You didn't have DVDs, of course. But so people would go to the movies. They were such a big part of our lives as kids.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
and
they were. Yep.
and these guys were larger than life, and it was a turning point when you had from adults going to movies to now the younger generation, the kids going to movies, because they were seeing people their age going through things and doing things, and they did really, they really did kind of set the tone for a generation, maybe two, So if the people that haven't seen these movies, the younger generation listen to us, go check out these movies, and you may think they're kind of silly now, but you got to understand the context and the time that they came from. It really, when he said that, it really kind of sparked something to me. I'm like, man, he's right. There was such a turn at that point. And it was kind of like, I guess they call it a zeitgeist or something, right? Is that when everything comes together? It's just...
Exactly.
And that's kind of what it was. And things were changing at that moment. And for us and in the 80s and for the kids, Generation X. And, it was really amazing. So it was kind of nice to go back, revisit that, as well as see him kind of talk to the other actors and get their perspectives. So it was pretty amazing. Go ahead, man. I've talked too much. Go ahead.
No, hey, that's quite all right. I'm glad you did, because it just shows how much you love those films as much as I do. And, it also dawned on me too, Eric, that when I was watching this documentary, it made me think about one primary thing here, and that is those films. John Hughes had a way of tapping into the teenage angst and to the growing up challenges of teenage years, especially in the 1980s, when divorce rates were skyrocketing in this country, and the tradition of the nuclear family, where you have a husband and a wife and 3 kids, and they're all living happily ever after in a 3-bedroom house with a white picket fence. That was starting to go downhill. And in the 1980s, in the decade of the 80s, youth in particular felt like they were unheard. They felt like they were mistreated. They felt like
disassociated.
Disassociated, yeah.
That's what they called that generation. Sorry, but that generation was called the latchkey kids too.
Exactly.
And for people who don't know what that is, that was that basically, nobody would be home. Your parents would be working, whether they were together or divorced. Parents wouldn't be home. Kids would come home on their own and literally have a key, usually around their neck, so I call them latchkey. They have a key hanging around their neck. That's the symbolism. But you would basically have a key to the house. You let yourself in. You take care of yourself until your parents got home, at 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, sometimes maybe later. So you had a generation that grew up just not with a lot of parental supervision around. That we survived, but that's where that term comes from, latchkey kid. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and so it's all right. And so, when I was watching that movie, after hearing a lot of the feelings that these actors, these people had kept trapped inside for so long, it made me truly realize that the characters they portrayed in their films were exact microcosms of who these people really were when they were growing up and who they are today. And that really the characters that Judd Nelson and Ali Sheedy and Molly Ringwald played and Emilio Estevez played in Breakfast Club and so on and so forth, those are the real people who were in those films, and those are the real people who they are today. And that's what made the John Hughes films so special. It's because he had a way of tapping into that teenage angst and the realities of growing up a teen in the 80s and bringing it to life for the adult world to see. And so that's what also was important about this documentary, was Andrew McCarthy, I believe, at its core here, wanted the viewers of this documentary, mainly of a younger audience, but of general audiences all around, to appreciate what decade they were growing up in, what hurdles they were trying to overcome to establish their own careers, but then also to make everybody realize that, hey, look, we don't need to have something like this divide us. We don't need to have something like this define us. Let's come together. Let's talk about it. And let's just finally bury the hatchet. Let's just finally, because I remember that one specific point in the interview with Emilio Estevez where he said, look, I don't want to dredge up bad memories here. But again, like what you alluded to, he said he agreed to talk about it. because Andrew reached out and called him and said, "Hey, let's discuss this and get it off our chest once and for all."
Yeah.
And so that's at the core is what the Brat Pack represents. The Brat Pack doesn't represent a group of teenage misfits who all they do all day is just do drugs,
Yeah, it's a
smoke
bunch of
cigarettes,
spoiled
drink.
kids.
A
Yeah.
bunch of spoiled entitled brats. What it refers to is a group of kids growing up in a society that rejected them, and they're trying to adapt to society the best way they know how. That's the heartfelt message of that documentary is don't let that society define you. You define yourselves, and then let everybody else judge you for who you are.
Well, and and you brought up a good point too, and also I just want to say that as far as they also said in the documentary when they talked to some people that weren't in the Brat Pack, they were just people who grew up watching those movies, and they made mention that listen, a lot of those movies meant so much, and that's what it was. Those movies meant so much to kids because, like I said, we didn't have social media, we didn't have all this stuff, and a lot of times I think people could feel pretty isolated, but in watching those movies and the way that they were so true to life that people felt, wait, there's other people out there like me. I'm not alone. And that's why I think those movies did just really attach to so many. I mean, so many people attached to those movies, and it did not only, I wouldn't say define a generation. I would say, I don't know, how would I put it? I would say help the generation define itself, maybe.
You know what? Yeah, I think that's an apt description. What you just said there. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because the teenagers growing up in the 80s were much different than when I grew up in the 90s. Teens that grew up in the 90s, much different than those 80s teens. The 80s teens were tougher than my teen generation was. I'll put it that way.
Mm. Yeah, because we had to I don't even, did we have microwaves back then? I know I didn't.
Oh yeah. Yeah, we had microwaves.
We had to. I was gonna say I didn't have a microwave back then though. We were much tougher. We had to go kill our food and bring it home and fry it up.
I gotta go spear the fish and hunt the coon.
Yeah, and that's the one thing that I think that is lacking a lot too with a lot of the movies and stuff and today is just, even though I'm older, I mean, I can still see a coming of age movie and be like, that is made today, and if it's good, and say, oh, okay, I recognize that, I understand that, I was there, I was there as well, and enjoy the movie for what it is, and unfortunately, I don't think there's a lot of that going on today. We don't have that connection with the movies like that. Or with the stories just don't have the connection to us, or can have the connection to the younger generation that they used to. It seems like a lot of it is just white noise now. It's just goofy entertainment, and it's not really that doesn't have the same impact that those movies had back then for the generation back then.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with you on that. I really would.
Yeah. So yeah, it was a great documentary. I would say it was funny. It was the ending was kind of funny. So we mentioned some of the people that he did talk to. You said Anthony Michael Hall was not in it. Also,
what I liked about this was at the very end, because he had a hard time getting Judd Nelson.
That's what I was getting to. Yeah.
Okay, I'll let you tell it then.
Oh, no, I was just saying it was just funny because he was trying to get a hold of Judd Nelson, or I guess hook up with Judd Nelson to do the documentary, and it never worked out.
Yep.
The last shot of last couple shots of the movie is that, of course, he's out there like on a dock, somewhere on a lake or something, and his phone rings, and he picks it up, and he's all, "Oh, hey, Judd." And then all of a sudden you get the last scene of Breakfast Club when Judd Nelson's character is walking across the football field, and he pumps his fist in the air, with the "Don't you forget it," and I was like, oh man, so he never got him on the show. I was like so disappointed. And I'm sure, I don't even know what is going on with Judd Nelson. Like, where it was funny when they talked to Timothy Hutton. It was interesting to see him. He like lives out in the middle of who knows where, just like a regular guy now, living on a farm or something.
Yeah, he lives on an isolated farm. They're way up in upstate New York.
Yeah. So it's interesting. It's interesting. So I wonder what's going on with Judd Nelson. It seems like there are some of these. Obviously some of them kept on with their careers. Molly Ringwald has been in some stuff, and then recently, of course, Demi Moore, John Cryer has obviously been in stuff. Rob Lowe.
Ali Sheedy.
But then a lot of them just kind of stepped away, including Andrew McCarthy. I mean, even though he is made this documentary, I think he's been in some stuff recently. But yeah, it's an amazing, it is an amazing thing, and that was the one thing that I think that I was kind of hoping that the author of that piece, David Blum, would have at least said, is that, I do understand that, the power of an art back then, at least, of an article that could change people's lives forever, but he never even alluded to that. And, and I don't think, I don't know if it's like didn't want to take responsibility or whatever, but I mean, that's what happened to these guys. And some of them made it out okay, and some of them, got hurt pretty bad, which I think Andrew did, because of that. But yeah, those movies, I mean, Brats is a great documentary. I would suggest if you watch that, and if you haven't, definitely go back. As a matter of fact, we just went back and we rewatched Breakfast Club after we watched this movie or this documentary, Brats. And and going back, Jason, and watching The Breakfast Club, it's amazing, man. That is such a great movie. I mean, we didn't know what we had back then, really. It was just another movie. Another Saturday night. But man,
it really was.
What a great movie, and the documentary, especially if you come from that generation, that era, if you watched any of those movies, you heard the name Brat Pack, I definitely would say you need to watch this documentary. Yeah, it was really done well. Good job.
Yep. Yeah, I would recommend it too. Big 2 thumbs up for Andrew McCarthy for making this documentary. Thank you. Enjoyed it thoroughly there.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, that's about all the time we have today, folks. Appreciate you guys listening. If you get a chance, check out our social media. We are on Twix at PTI_podcast.
And on Facebook at Pardon the Intermission.
And then check out also Rumble and YouTube. Look up Pardon the Intermission. We're putting up trailer reaction videos and all kinds of fun stuff over there too. So anyway, you guys take care, and we will catch you on the next one.
Yep. Peace out. God bless everyone.